Well, this morning we continue in the book of Nehemiah, looking at this rebuilding project that Nehemiah has undertaken, looking to see what God will do through him for the people of Israel that have been in exile, and again for the glory of God as well. So we will be reading, and maybe it's never been done here before, all of Nehemiah chapter 3. If you've ever had a telemarketer call you, and some of you have simpler names than others, if you were to stand up here and read these names, you might have some idea of what a telemarketer goes through. But these names are important, and they are recorded for a reason. And so we are going to read from Nehemiah chapter 3 this morning, and listen to what God has to say to us. Nehemiah 3 at verse 1. Then Eliashib the high priest rose up with his brothers the priests, and they built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and set its doors. They consecrated it as far as the Tower of the 100, as far as the Tower of Hananel. And next to him the men of Jericho built. And next to them Zakur the son of Imri built. The sons of Hassanah built the fish gate. They laid its beams and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars. And next to them Meremoth the son of Uriah, son of Hakaz, repaired. Next to them Meshullam the son of Berechiah, son of Meshezabel, repaired. And next to them Zadok the son of Baanah, repaired. And next to them the Tekoites repaired, but their nobles would not stoop to serve their Lord. Joiada the son of Paseah, Meshullam the son of Besodiah, repaired the gate of Yeshana. They laid its beams and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars. And next to them repaired Melatiah the Gibeonite and Jadon the Meronothite, the men of Gibeon and of Mizpah, the seat of the governor of the province beyond the river. Next to them Uzziel, son of Hariah, goldsmiths, repaired. Next to them Hananiah, one of the perfumers, repaired, and they restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. Next to them Rephaiah, the son of Hur, ruler of half the district of Jerusalem, repaired. Next to them Jediah, the son of Horomath, repaired opposite his house. And next to him Hattush, son of Hashabaniah, repaired. Malchiah, the son of Harim, and Hashub, the son of Paeth Moab, repaired another section and the Tower of the Ovens. Next to him Shullam, the son of Halohesh, ruler of half the district of Jerusalem, repaired, he and his daughters. Hanun and the inhabitants of Zanoah repaired the valley gate. They rebuilt it and set its doors, its bars, and its bolts and bars, and repaired 1,000 cubits of the wall as far as the dung gate. Malchiah, the son of Rechab, the ruler of the district of Beth Haccherem, repaired the dung gate. He rebuilt it and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars. And Shallum, the son of Kol-Hoseh, ruler of the district of Mizpah, repaired the fountain gate. He rebuilt it and covered it and set its doors, its bolts, its bars. And he built the wall of the pool of Shelah, of the king's garden, as far as the stairs that go down from the city of David. After him, Nehemiah, son of Azbuk, ruler of half the district of Beth Zur, repaired to a point opposite the tombs of David, as far as the artificial pool and as far as the house of the mighty men. After him, the Levites repaired. Rehum, the son of Bani. Next to him, Rashabiah, ruler of half the district of Keilah, repaired for its districts. After him, their brothers repaired. Bavi, the son of Henadad, ruler of half the district of Keilah. Next to him, Ezer, the son of Jeshua, ruler of Mizpah, repaired another section opposite the ascent to the armory at the buttress. After him, Barak, the son of Zabel, repaired another section from the buttress to the door of the house of Eliashib, the high priest. After him, Meremoth, the son of Uriah, son of Hakaz, repaired another section from the door of the house of Eliashib to the end of the house of Eliashib. After him, the priests, the men surrounding the area, repaired. After them, Benjamin and Hashub repaired opposite their house. After them, Azariah, son of Maaseiah, son of Ananiah, repaired beside his own house. After him, Benui, son of Henadad, repaired another section from the house of Azariah to the buttress and to the corner. Palal, son of Uzai, repaired opposite the buttress and the tower projecting from the upper house of the king at the court of the guard. After him, Pedaiah, the son of Parosh, and the temple servants living on Ophel, repaired to a point opposite the water gate on the east and the projecting tower. After him, the Tekoites repaired another section opposite the great projecting tower as far as the wall of Ophel. Above the horse gates, the priests repaired, each one opposite his own house. After them, Zadok, the son of Immer, repaired opposite his own house. After him, Shemaiah, the son of Shechaniah, the keeper of the east gate, repaired. After him, Hananiah, the son of Shelemiah, and Hanun, the sixth of Zalaph, repaired another section. After him, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, repaired opposite his chamber. After him, Malchiah, one of the goldsmiths, repaired as far as the house of the temple servants and of the merchants opposite the muster gate and to the upper chamber of the corner. And between the upper chamber of the corner and the sheep gate, the goldsmiths and the merchants repaired. I need a drink of water. You know, there are a lot of things in life that we can learn from. I remember many years ago, as Karen and I were just starting out in our married life, I worked in lawn maintenance and landscaping, and I really enjoyed that work. I've always been the kind of person that loves to see what was before and what it looks like after. There's just such great joy in seeing something transformed. I've had other positions throughout my life that did not suit me in some ways because it didn't have this contrast to it. And you just couldn't see the progress or the results from what you were doing. But those things, those I always took great joy in. When I was cutting grass, it was my goal to keep every line as straight as possible. Now, I may have been the only one that ever noticed my own lawns that I took care of. I used to do the field at the old Park Davis, that big corner field, and I would mow it in certain ways so that when you drove past it, you could see exactly how straight those lines were. And I turned my head every time and watched as far as I could just to see the work that I had done, because I had great pride in what I did. I took joy in what I did, and I tried to do my best. The man, the owner of the business, was also so particular in his work. When we would be getting a load of trees in from a large nursery supplier, and we would be putting them in our field so that we would have them ready for when we were going to plant them, they're just there, healed in. They're just some bark and dirt thrown around them so the root ball doesn't dry out. They're not planted. They're not there forever. But if you didn't have that tree straight in line with all the rest, you would go back and straighten it. And all it was just sitting in the field waiting for somebody to buy it. But he took great pride in his work. And everything he did from that position of everything to be done with excellence. I like to see the progress of what I'm doing. Nehemiah is about to undertake this huge building project. A huge building project, a rebuilding of the city of Jerusalem. All of its walls and gates have been disrupted. Some have been completely destroyed. And Nehemiah is going to take up the task of making sure all of that gets taken care of. I want to look at this passage in three different areas that I think will help us understand what's going on and then how it applies to us, what we can take from this. One, I want to look at the people involved in the work. I'm not going to reread all those names to let you know who was involved. But there are about 38 individuals listed in this passage and 42 groups of people. And I think it's not just happenstance that the first people listed as being those that are going to take up the process of rebuilding are the priests. They are the ones that are going to be setting the example for the rest of the group. They are going to be leading the way. That is part of what they do. They are leaders of the people of Israel. Even though they have been in exile for so long, they know that their rightful position is as a leader. And yes, they are spiritual leaders, but it was not beneath them to do the work that needed to be done to repair the walls and the gates and sections there in Jerusalem. And so the priests are the first to take that up. And we have leaders among us. There are leaders in every church. There are always leaders in God's church. God continues to appoint leaders to his people. And the leaders should never be so far above what they are called to do that they wouldn't do anything that seems to be outside of their own description. And that was certainly the case for these men. They were going to set the example for the people to rebuild. It was up to them to start the process, and they began it, and they consecrated their work and set the work in motion. And there's all kinds of different people. About every type of person is represented in this list. There are different craftsmen. You have goldsmiths and perfumers that are mentioned. These are not people that get down and work with stone and mason and wood. These are goldsmiths and perfumers. The perfumers work with delicate things, and they're mixing, and here they are out rebuilding walls. And their craft and their business was not so important to them that they couldn't set it aside for the purpose of rebuilding. There are other merchants as well that are there taking part in the rebuilding process. And their trade, their business, their livelihood was not so important to them at this point that it's not worth setting that aside to take up the work of rebuilding the place where God's people have their identity in the city of God. There are family units that are there. There are men and women working together. One man takes his daughters with him to do the work and lets them see what joy it can bring to rebuild for a purpose beyond what we understand at first sight, a purpose beyond ourselves. Men and women and younger people take up the task as family units. There are temple servants, those that are there to make sure that everything that gets done in the temple daily happens. Theirs is not to rebuild walls. Theirs is to make sure that everything that happens throughout the temple at different times of the day, throughout the year, that those things are in place and ready to go. But here they are, building a city, rebuilding the place where God's people dwell, where their identity is. There are people that are not from that particular area. Nehemiah would be one of them, although Nehemiah is not listed as one of the workers. We did read the word Nehemiah. It's another Nehemiah. Nehemiah is not listed as being there. Nehemiah is casting the vision for the people. Nehemiah is a long ways away. He's traveled to be to this place from a long distance from being in exile. But there are others from surrounding areas, 3, 4, 5, 6 miles away, 11, 10, 12 miles away. People from surrounding areas, people that have interest in the city of Jerusalem, exiles from places that are not as far away are there. And even though they have a place and a position wherever they are, as Nehemiah did, Nehemiah's cupbearer to the king. And at great risk, he left that position to come and take up this work. All of these other people from surrounding areas, areas of Jericho, Gibeon, Mizpah, Tekoa, and other areas, people from surrounding areas are leaving what they're doing, leaving their normal lives at this time to make sure that the city of Jerusalem is being rebuilt. There were some that did extra work. Several times you may have noticed it speaks of those who repaired another section. There were those that had enough energy, enough time, enough interest in it that they kept going. They were given a task to do, and when they got done, they repaired another section. The work was done here, there was still work to be done over there, and so they went around over there. The whole rebuilding of Jerusalem happens in a counterclockwise fashion. I would not have done well there. I'm a clockwise kind of guy. But they rebuilt the walls and the gates and everything in a counterclockwise fashion. And so those that got done doing their work over here got back in line and said, where else can we help? There were people that just wanted to make sure that whatever needed to be done could be done and got done. There are different places that they worked. There are gates mentioned. 10 gates are mentioned here in this passage. You have, and I'm not going to list them all, there's the sheep gate, there's the fish gate, you have the fountain gate, the dung gate, the water gate, the horse gate, the mustard gate, and the east gate. So they rebuilt gates. They rebuilt things that had significance to them as a people in the city of Jerusalem. They rebuilt the sheep gate. The sheep gate is where people would bring in their animals for sacrifice so they could go to the temple and come to this place before God where their sins were atoned for once again. The first place to be rebuilt was the sheep gate, a place where sacrifice and atonement could take place. They went to the fish gate. It was a very vulnerable place. A lot of merchants were coming through this place. The fish gate was a place where a supply of food would be coming in. Because if you're going to have a city, you have to make sure that you're supplied with everything that you need. All the resources for daily life are there. Food is necessary if you're going to live in the city, so the fish gate is repaired. You have the fountain gate and the dung gate and the water gate. All of these things had to do with cleansing and being clean. The dung gate is where you get rid of that which is unclean. Everything was thrown outside. There was a particular area in the far corner. Everything would be thrown over the hill. It would be burned. Purifying, getting rid of all the things that are impure. You have the water gate. And you have the fountain gate. The fountain gate is where the pool, probably the pool of Siloam by the king's palace, that place for cleansing and healing. You have the water gate where water comes into the city, that's constant supply of fresh water for a city that has no wells, no supply of its own, and the water comes in through the water gate. And so you have places of cleansing and nourishment, and the dung gate for removing that which is impure. All of those things talking about keeping the place clean in different ways. Because in order for the people of God to continue to exist, cleanliness, and not just washing hands. That's where the Pharisees got it all wrong. To be clean before their God was an important part of who they were. And these things represent being clean. You have the horse gate and the muster gate. These are places where the military would enter and go out, come in, go out. The muster gate is exactly what you would think it might be. Maybe not. If you're going to rally the troops for war, the other term you would use for that, you muster the troops. This is where all the troops were mustered. This was important for them because the reason they're in exile is because they were defeated. So making sure that they are secure is very important to them. The horse gate, where horses come in ready for battle. The muster gate, where the troops are rallied together before they're sent out for war. These are all gates that need to be taken care of. Those are some of the places that worked. And then there's the east gate. This is the gate that would lead to the Temple Mount and into the temple. Because temple life was central to the people of Jerusalem. There were places that people worked that were near their homes because it was important for them to work where they had a particular interest. This means a lot to me here. I'm going to work in this place. So there were people who built along the wall that was right opposite their home because their neighborhood meant something to them. The place that they reside has great significance for them, and they want to make sure that where they live is rebuilt and it's ready to go. So people built near where they lived. There was the Tower of Ovens that was mentioned. This is where bread is baked and where pottery is fired. Things for daily life, for eating, for all of the different vessels that are used for those daily things. The Tower of Ovens was one of the places they worked. The offal. The offal is where the temple servants live. So there's a place for those that are ready to serve in the temple. Once again, that place is listed here. And there are some places that are not rebuilt. We don't catch that as much just by reading it. Other versions of this text give us a little bit better idea of that, where it says they left off the work. And if you would look at a map of the city of Jerusalem, before the exile, they had a huge wall that encompassed another section there that was part of Jerusalem. They don't need that at this time. This is a long time after their exile, and they are a different people now. And that section of the wall that they had before is not necessary for them anymore. There's something about their existence now that's not necessary to include it in the repair work. And so they left off that, and they filled in another spot. There were places that were not rebuilt at all. And you have the purpose of the work. There are 8 times, it's mentioned in the passage, that they rebuilt. There are actually a couple times where names are given, and their names mean to rebuild. And so there are people that are there because that seems to be exactly who they are. But 8 times it said to rebuild. They rebuilt this and they rebuilt that. Did you catch what was rebuilt? Every time something was rebuilt, it was the gate that was being talked about. Those had been completely destroyed. Those were the things that needed to be completely rebuilt because they didn't exist anymore. They had been so dismantled that they needed to rebuild them. That was part of the condition of Jerusalem there. It had been some of the places, especially the gates, completely destroyed. There was nothing to work with, so they brought timbers in, and they had to get new materials in. And they had to take that and they had to rebuild those gates because those gates represented something very specific to the people. And those things that were so representative had to be completely rebuilt. Sometimes in our existence, if we look at the story of Nehemiah and we look at the condition of the church now, there are some times throughout history, there are times and places where when you look at the condition of the church, it has been so devastated that sometimes portions of it just need to be rebuilt. It's just been so dismantled by the society around us, by the ways of the world, and we've let it be destroyed, and we need to rebuild those things. It was very interesting to me to look at that and see that the rebuilding was of the gates. Different ways for people to enter into the city for different purpose. All for being a part of God's people, all for God's grand story, but different ways for people to enter into. Some were coming into the city because they were there to bring supplies, to supply the people. Some were there because they were bringing military preparations, the horses, and they're there for military purpose. They're there for the security of the place. There are those that are there because they mean to enter into the temple. They're there for, they want to get right again. In all these different places, all the different ways that you could enter into the place of Jerusalem, all of them needed to be rebuilt. And then there's the repairs. That was one of the main things that you heard over and over and over again. It's one of the only words I actually got right the whole time, I'm sure of it, was repaired. Repaired, 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 repaired 35 times. These were areas of the city that were not completely destroyed, but they were no longer secure. These were places that needed to be shored up once again, made firm and strong. They didn't just quick whitewash over anything. They didn't just do kind of a half-hearted job and, well, that looks pretty good. They didn't do it for appearance sake. They made sure that word repair gives that idea of re-strengthening, re-securing. 35 times in all these different places, they made sure that there was strength to this place. And they did it because they had been ridiculed. They did it because what was there up until this point that had been lying there for years, generations, it was their shame. The place that identifies who they are as a people is in ruins, and they're suffering the shame because of it. They wanted to be a people because of all the people on the face of the earth. To be the people of God in a place of shame would just compound that word. To be the people of God in shame. Shouldn't all or any of the other nations around them or any of the nations in the world, ought not those people be the ones that are in shame because they don't follow the one true living God? And it's the people of God that are in shame. And these people, every one of them had a part. There was one group of people that was listed. They wouldn't lift their hand to do the work. It didn't matter to them. They didn't care. Everybody else had such an interest in making sure that the name of their God, the name of the people of God, was restored once again, and that their shame and their reproach was taken away. And they all had a part, every one of them, in doing that. They all had a place to work. It didn't matter if they were working, making fine, delicate little things with their hands. They were going to be out there on the wall. It didn't matter if you were there mixing chemistry things in the lab or doing whatever. It didn't matter if you were a merchant someplace. It didn't matter if you didn't live nearby. The people were going to make sure that what needed to be done got done, and that Jerusalem would be the city it was intended to be. I've been a wall builder before. Part of my work that I did back in those days was actually building walls. I can take you past the first wall I ever built on 32nd Street, west of Grascup. When I finished that wall, the first wall I built on my own, when I finished that wall, it spanned a distance of about 15 feet. It was like a large U shape at the corner of a condo. From one end to the other, it was about 16 feet. I just so happened to have a long 2x4 with me and a level. Now, what you need to know about building a wall is that you start at the very bottom, and I'm changing levels as I go. These were the cement blocks, interlocking blocks, and you keep changing level as you go along. And every time you do that, you need to make sure that everything stays level with the course below it. It has to pitch the right way. It can't be leaning forward or backwards. It can't be tipping right or left, or it's just not going to lay out right. I had no idea what it was going to turn out to be like. I had such great joy when I put that level on there, and it was still just as level on one end as it was the other. I can take you past a wall that I built on the north side of Holland along Lake Shore. This was a wall that was beyond what it was designed to do. One of these driveways that go straight up like this along the lake shore, and they wanted walls built around their trees, which would also then support the driveway. So if the wall fails, the driveway fails. Those walls are still there. I was part of a rebuilding project. It just dawned on me as I was preparing, finishing up, getting my mind in gear this morning. I rebuilt the wall before. I've built them from the ground up, and there's great satisfaction in that. But I was called in once to rebuild a wall. It had been completely toppled over, destroyed, unusable. And so we had to disassemble it back down to almost the very bottom row and rebuild. That was hard work. They were big blocks. And it was 15 feet tall by the time we got done with it. And that's a big wall for a concrete wall. It's good work. I don't mean to say all those things to pat myself on the back. I enjoyed all that work. But God has used the different things in my life to prepare me for other things in my life. And I'm sure you've had that as well. And I think where we are now, here as a church, and not just this church, there are some things about the church universal that need serious repair and rebuilding. Sometimes whole denominations go by the wayside. They drift so far from the Word of God that they are no longer a true church. And yet they still are in the spotlight in different ways. And the world around us gets this idea of what the church is. by some of those places. And it needs rebuilding. Rebuilding from the ground up. There are churches that are being attacked. They have suffered loss in different ways, and there's repair work that needs to be done. We've allowed the different ways for people to enter into the church for different purpose, for different reasons, to become destroyed, and they need to be rebuilt. We need to make sure that we allow for people to come into the city of God, to be the people of God. And we need to see how desperate it is to do the work. Every one of us has a part in rebuilding. I read a quote. I didn't make a note of who said it, but somebody said, I really enjoy work. I could sit around watching it all day long. That's not our task. D.L. Moody had another quote, something along the lines of, there are people that like to work, but I forget how exactly he said it. There are people, though, that like to sit on the sidelines. When they think of work, when they think of the Christian existence in the church, they think of a comfortable padded seat, and they think of an offering plate that is passed by them while they sit in comfort, to listen to a man preach to them, to give to different charities. And yet, he said, not once have they ever thought of the Christian faith as actual work. Work. That was D.L. Moody. It is work, brothers and sisters. For us here in this place, we have the opportunity to rebuild and repair, to make this place a place where there is no shame, a place where there are still different ways for people to come into this place to see what it is to be the people of God. We all have ways that we can help. You've received the gift surveys from weeks ago already. Some of you I know were not here during that time. They've been put in your box if we didn't get one back. I would really love to see everybody have that returned and say, this is what I'm willing to do. There are those of you that I know can do all kinds of work. There are those that have been here and have been working. They say, I'll do some more. Some maybe don't have the energy of others, but they say, I'll do what I can. Even if it just means working right where I am, right next to my house. I can still pray for people. I can still make a meal for somebody. I can still encourage people. I can still go and sit with somebody. Some we need to do much harder work and much more work. But I think if we can rebuild and repair the areas of our church here, the glory of God will rest on this place for as long as we put our minds to it, for as long as we continue to say, where can you use me, God? That east gate that was repaired, that east gate, when you go to the book of Ezekiel, that's where the glory of God left. And the east gate is where the glory of God returns once again. We have opportunity, brothers and sisters, to be a part of something far bigger than building a wall that you can go look at and put a level on. When I started looking at life as a pastor, there was this part of me that thought, but where's the before and after part of that? Because you could end up being somebody like Jeremiah, and you can preach to a people for your whole life. And Jeremiah maybe had one convert, the man who took notes for him. But the rest of his life, there was nothing for him. And sometimes that's the life of the one called to serve. And you have all the things that you were before and all the things that you put into it, and you don't seem to have anything to show for it. I always love building walls and doing things where this is what it was before, and especially that wall that was torn down. It had toppled over. It was built incorrectly, and it was just in shambles. And we spent weeks repairing that thing and rebuilding it. I love that kind of work. But how much more significant isn't the work here? Where we can take a look at who we are, what it means to be the people of God here in Overijssel, and say, I want to make this a great place once again. Not for our name. Not for our name. I want the presence and the glory of God to be back in this place in such a way that people will continue to remark about it for years. What a rebuilding project that would be. But it would take a lot of effort. A lot of effort. Never once in the passage that it mentioned anybody was doing this so that the name of God would be glorified. Everybody knew that they had a part. This is who they were called to be. This is what their identity was, and they were going to rebuild it because that's who I am. I'm a child of God. I'm going to continue to live as a child of God. I'm going to make the place where I live, where people associate God with me, I'm going to make that place a place where people can speak about, and God will be glorified. We can sit comfortable. We can continue to give as we should. We can continue to sit and listen as we should. But so much of the Christian life is beyond here. This is 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening of our Christian existence. The rest of it is about being a people that are part of a kingdom with kingdom work. I really want to encourage us to think of our existence here in this place as a rebuilding project. We've looked at it as transplanting who we are, replanting our existence here, not putting up someplace, a new place someplace else. Let's repent. Let's rebuild here. I think if we put our hearts and minds to it, if we seek the Lord's direction in that, as in everything, He will not fail us. Everybody here has a part. Let's pray.